Hi. Uh, Today I wanted to talk about dysfunction, family, emotions, the need to be normal. I'm looking at my makeup to see how I did. And connecting with people. So I just bought a new tablet for making videos. I've enjoyed making videos so much that I felt the need to upgrade my technology because my technology was causing me quite a headache. So I bought a new tablet that, let's get this wig, that has plenty of memory, so I don't have to worry about running out of memory when I'm only 24 minutes into a video. Uh, and It's kind of driving me a little bit crazy because the lens is always all the way on one side of the tablet instead of in the center up here. It's all the way over here, which is a little bit of a nuisance. So if I hold the tablet straight, this is where it puts me. So I have to tilt it slightly to get myself in the center. But we can work that out, right? I'm still checking out my makeup too. I ran out of my eyeliner, ran out as I was putting it on, and I had to put it on with just a little nib with my fingers like this. And I have bad eyesight, so it's kind of it was hard to see it anyways. But having this thing right in front of me is kind of helping me out. But maybe I should just start over. No. So this video, the kind of the impetus behind this video was my relationship with my family. It has been strained since I came out as trans, which is not to say that it was good before I came out as trans. I don't really want to diagnose my family as dysfunctional, but if you read or if I read the kind of the symptoms of a dysfunctional family, they kind of match. There is how does that look? I don't want to hold it up like this. My arms will get tired, but I look better. So being obsessed with being normal or being seen as normal by the outside world, I don't think qualifies as a family as dysfunctional. I think a lot of families are kind of preoccupied with appearing to be normal to the outside world, but that is one of the what I've read about dysfunctional families is that is kind of the main objective of the dysfunctional family is the reason that they are dysfunctional is that they are kind of preoccupied with appearing to be normal, and so that what that kind of brings with it is this reluctance to discuss emotional topics, emotionally charged topics, such as having a member of the family who's transgender. Now with my family, they have discussed the issue amongst themselves when I am not around, but I have discussed it with members of the family, but as far as like a family discussion, I mean like with everybody together, it hasn't happened. And that by itself is a little bit, for me, stress inducing. It is very much it makes me feel shut out. It makes me feel not important to them. It makes me feel like my happiness is just not that big of a deal to them. If you kind of helps paint the picture. When my family gets together, there's usually drinking involved, and it's usually only on special occasions that we meet. And by special occasions, I mean holidays, Christmas, weddings, Father's Day, stuff like that, birthdays. And so for me, that is really not a time to be talking about stuff like this. And people might say, you need to get your family together on a non-holiday and sit them all down and talk about it. But based on experiences I've had, I don't know if that's a good idea. It might work. I have brought up the issue while we were on vacation once. We went to the beach, as all together, and it was a kind of a situation where it was kind of late at night. We'd all been drinking. Most people had kind of gone to bed, and it was just me and my brothers talking. And I brought up the fact, basically what I just said about the issue not being talked about while I was around, and it turned into a fight, and I was told that I was being self-centered, which I would say is also a kind of, I don't want to say stereotypical, because I'm not an expert in dysfunctional families, but I would say that is a kind of dysfunctional family type of response to guilt trip people for expressing emotional kind of wants, I guess, maybe. Like I said, emotionally charged topics. And of course, it's not just that they haven't talked about it with me, really. When I say they haven't talked about it, so like I came out to my dad and my brother, and at work, I worked with both of them, and we talked about it then. And there was at work, and there was a few days that we actually spent talking about just the three of us. And then there was one occasion where my dad's wife was involved in the conversation also. But basically, for the rest of the family, they found out through Facebook when I came out on Facebook, or through my dad and my brother also. I'm sure they kind of talked, and so it wasn't really an entire family thing when I came out. But even the people who weren't there, who I didn't come out directly to, a lot of them haven't talked to me about it. The only two who have are my two half brothers. Who, because when I talk about my brothers, I have one full-blooded brother and two half brothers, and so the full-blooded brother was the one that I worked with, and he and I talked about it, with my dad too, and but my two half brothers did come and talk to me about it when I came out on Facebook, and they were supportive. I mean, they were kind of like, if you listen to them talk, you could kind of tell that they weren't thrilled about it, but they were kind of like, well, if that's what you want to do, then, they didn't say we're cool with it. I don't remember what they said exactly, but they kind of made it like, you're our brother. That's more important. And in the very beginning, I would say things were kind of okay. I was unfriended by my dad and my full-blooded brother on Facebook when I started posting pictures of myself like this, and that bothered me. I have talked about it in another video that basically confirmed my fear that I'd had basically my entire life, that if I revealed myself to people that I would be rejected. And it basically, it was like all those years that I was worried about being myself, or it wasn't a paranoia, it was real. The fear was based on something real. And but it certainly bothered me, because I didn't like to think that my family would just jettison me like that. And I shouldn't say jettison, because I was still a part of the family, but emotionally it's like when you're unfriended by your own family because they don't want to see what you're posting. That's a kind of shutting the door, and it might be a mild type of it. They still talk to me, but and then when my dad told me that I wasn't welcome at his house in women's clothing, and my mother told me the same thing right about the same time. It wasn't exactly the same time. They don't live together. They live in totally different parts of the state, and that did bother me. But my mother didn't even want to talk about it, and I told her, and she's like, I don't want to talk about it. And but she and I don't have a relationship, and hardly at all. I mean, our relationship is basically, I might talk to her like once every 2 or 3 years almost. In the beginning, it wasn't always that way. It kind of dwindled from the time I was 8 to where I was seeing her kind of constantly to seeing her once or twice a year to seeing her. I haven't seen her physically in I don't even know how many years it's been. But yeah, she and I don't really even have a relationship. It's not really even a relationship. But it still hurt, when your mother says, I don't want to talk about it. It's basically just it's like, well, I already kind of got the impression that you don't really care about me. And so this is, I guess, just another piece of evidence. But I don't know if that's all I really want to talk about as far as the family goes. The current situation is the environment. When we're all together, the environment is just, for me at least, the environment is just kind of tense. I mean, that one of the signs or symptoms or whatever you want to call it of dysfunctional families is the elephant in the room. If there is an emotionally charged topic that the family members don't discuss, especially when the person who is causing the problem is present. For example, if dad is beating up mom and all the kids are talking about it when they're alone, but when mom and dad are around, they don't mention it. That is a kind of a sign of a dysfunctional family, and I don't mean that it is proof, because there might be instances where that happens. If dad is beating up mom, the kids might talk about it, and maybe they think they can't go to their parents about it. Maybe they need to talk about somebody else. But with my family, that was enough for my psychologist when I told her about that. When I told her about what was going on and the lack of communication. And the kind of the unwillingness to talk about this issue, she said, I am worried that you're in an unhealthy environment, and I suggest you start looking for connections outside of your family. And so that is one of the reasons that I started making YouTube videos. It is to kind of reach out to other people, and because of where I live, I don't feel like there's a good place for me to go. There are the main social kind of gathering places are churches, bars. I could go to grocery stores and gas stations and places like that to try to connect with people, but to me, that even in a not conservative town, I don't feel like that would be a very good idea. And I feel like the way for me to reach people who are more like me, who might sympathize with me or identify with me, the best way to do that is through YouTube. And maybe if there are 1,000 trans people in the area where I live, what's the best way to meet them? And maybe it's this. So that is one of the reasons I'm doing this, and that's why I'm talking about it now. But my objective is not to I don't know. But as far as connections go, I mean, if you can imagine, just assuming my family is dysfunctional, then you might assume that I'm just as much a part of the dysfunction as anyone. I would say that I have my share of problems. Have been tentatively diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which I don't want to go into the full detail of what that means, but for just I think the purpose of this video, might suffice to say that it just kind of means that I'm kind of cut off from my own emotional self or my real self, and so that is kind of what I wanted to talk about with the family. I've mentioned what's going on, and it wasn't just my psychologist actually who told me that. It was her. Actually, it was because I'm seeing a new psychologist now. There was the one from Atlanta who told me that. Now the one in Salisbury told me the same thing. She said you need to start looking for connections outside of your own family because you're bucking the system and they don't want anything to do with it. And so 2 friends have told me the same thing also. 4 people now have told me to seek connections outside of my family and not try to seek connections within my family. They didn't tell me to give up on my family. They didn't tell me to divorce myself from my family or anything like that. But it was for the sake of your own mental health, you need to not seek your family's approval. They didn't really use those words specifically, but it was more about connections, not trying to connect with the family. And what I've read about dysfunctional families is that the advice given on the articles I've read say if you realize your family is dysfunctional, you shouldn't. You're not trying to heal them, and that for me, I'm not out to try to heal my family at the moment, or to even prove to them that they're dysfunctional or anything like that, or to even prove to you. So yeah, my objective right now is not to get their approval. It would be nice to get it, but that is not so much my objective right now. My dad did tell me that I wasn't welcome at his house depending on who else was there. He didn't say that I couldn't come over in women's house, period. But he didn't clarify. He didn't say if it's just me and my wife, then you can come over. So, but I don't even want to ask him to clarify. It might, maybe at one point I will, but just because I feel like if I went over there presenting like this, it would just be it wouldn't be a good time. And I feel like almost in a way that I'm not gonna say that I don't need it, but I do kind of feel like that is not that getting their approval is not what I need. And but when it comes to making connections with people, I think to some degree you kind of need approval in a way. I don't know now this is where I'm getting into kind of dark waters because I've never really had a connection. I did not have friends in high school, like I said, growing up. I had made friends in college when I left to go, but it was more, I would say it was more of buddies. We're buddies, not necessarily friends. And I say that because when I left, we didn't keep in touch. They didn't call me. I didn't call them. I think I did speak to one of them once on the phone. I don't remember who called who, but that was it. And that was partly because of what I was going through when I left college, which was dealing with the issue of my sexual orientation, wondering whether I was gay or straight or bisexual. I did that all internally. I did not talk about that with anyone. So with the guys that I was hanging out with in college, I never brought it up to them. Even the one who I was attracted to, I never said to him. I never talked to him about it. And ever since, so I'm 45, and from then, I've had buddies. I've had drinking buddies, drug buddies. When I was in the Army, there were guys that I hung out with, but same thing. When I left the Army, we did not keep in touch. and I didn't want to. And it was a similar thing. I was just going through so much in my head that I just felt like I can't really open up to people. And no, that I don't want to say that's because of borderline personality disorder, because I don't really see that as a cause. I see that more of just as a kind of a name of a collection of symptoms. But you know, but the point that I'm kind of getting at is that I don't really know how to connect with people. And as far as emotions go, I mean, if one of the symptoms of a dysfunctional family is this kind of inability to share your own emotions, like, then I would say that in that sense, I don't know if what you call a member of a dysfunctional family. If you would say that, that I am dysfunctional, maybe you would say I'm dysfunctional. I don't know. But as far as expressing emotions goes, I would say that I'm not even a kindergartner. I'm like, my life has been one long walk through the desert. And I use that metaphor intentionally because it's just been a kind of like a dryness. Like it is just a lack of rain, if that makes any sense. I mean, I haven't really cried that many times in my life. And I don't know what you would consider many. I cried. The last time I really cried was when my niece died. I think that's been about 15 years, maybe. I'm not sure. But there is a kind of it's just a kind of arid, dry, waterless, rainless, bland, like there's no life growing kind of feeling almost. There's just a kind of but there is kind of also this sense that if I could somehow connect or whatever, that I would just start bawling my eyes out. I remember there was a man that I met in Atlanta. He was a spiritual teacher kind of thing, and he just seemed like if I could connect with anybody, it would be him. And that was partly one for just the way he was, the way he spoke to people, the way he interacted with people. But even with me in particular, there was a particular instance when I asked to speak to him kind of one-on-one, and we were sitting on his couch in his house, and he kind of like right beside each other, but he kind of turned on the couch to sit cross-legged on the couch, basically facing right towards me. I mean, looking right at me, like his whole body was like squared against mine, and so I turned to meet him, but I didn't turn completely the 90 degrees. I turned kind of like 45, and because I was a little bit like, this is a little bit awkward. But after, as soon as he did it, I was already, even though it felt awkward, I was still kind of feeling like this is what I've wanted my entire life. I basically just wanted someone to kind of sit and, face to face, and not be watching TV or talking to me when they got like 100 things they have to do or whatever, but just to sit and give me their full undivided attention, but do it in a way that was very. It made me feel like I was important. It made me feel like I was, like I mattered to him. And but I remember I don't actually remember if it was before that instance or afterwards, but I remember this image popped in my head of me. He was sitting like that on the floor. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor in this image that I had, and I was laying on the floor with my head on his, like his, kind of like the inside of his knee. I'm touching the inside of my knee, and I was just bawling my eyes out like a baby in this image that I had, just from years of carrying this stuff through the desert. What is that stuff? I don't really know. What I do know is that I just feel polluted. I don't know how else to put it. I just feel like I'm carrying around, like, in my body, in my head, just a ton of junk. Um, I I was driving around today. When I went to Walmart to buy this tablet. I went by a way that I don't usually go, and it took me by a college where I used to go for summer soccer camps when I was a teenager. The name of the college is Catawba College, if that matters to you. And when I was in high school, when I joined the high school, no, I take that back. I actually started going there before that because when I was on the YMCA team, that I was on in junior high, we practiced there at the Catawba College field. The Catawba College they have a soccer field for the soccer team, and they have a practice field, and we practiced on their practice field. But then when I went to high school, I was back there again for the soccer. The college put on a summer camp for soccer players, and I went, I don't know, 2 or 3 years or something. But it was that was one of I would say, the few times in my life that I actually felt good about who I was. Part of that was just from being on a team that had a lot of pride in itself. The high school team that I was on, there were a bunch of players who had played together from the time they were kids. I was on a YMCA team, but there was another team that was a kind of more. It wasn't YMCA; it was some other kind of league. But there was one of my neighbors was a soccer coach, and he took these kids from like almost like elementary school, early junior high, and we were one of the best teams around because of that in high school. And that, I don't think I've ever even told anybody that story, but that was one of the few times in my life where I kind of remember just feeling pretty good about myself. It felt good to be on a winning team. Compared to being on a losing team, for sure, because I played baseball too, and then my first year of baseball, we were the worst team in the league conference, whatever you call it, and I think we lost like every game, and it wasn't just, it was embarrassing, and it doesn't make you feel good. But when you're on a team that wins a lot, and the other guys take pride in themselves, and of course I spent most of my time on the bench. Until I got into, when I was in JV, I didn't. When I was in JV, I was a starter, so when I saw that place today, I kind of had a reference point. So I remembered my time back then, and because there was no really, I don't think there were any times between today and then those times back then. So there was a kind of reference point where I could compare kind of how I felt then to how I feel now. And the first thing I noticed was just that feeling of pollution. I just felt like my body was just full, like I said, just full of junk. And that could be just dietary things, but it wasn't just the body. It was also the mind, like emotionally, I just felt like I just need to what's the word? Expunge, purge. I need to throw up, take an emotional laxative. I don't know what. And I think that would happen if if there were people here that I felt like I could connect to. I don't know what that is based on, but I've long had this kind of idea that in order for me to cry, I need someone to cry to. I don't think there have been a few times in my life when I cried without someone else kind of around, and I think every one of those times I was drunk. Uh, So, I mean, like, if I were to, even right now, making this video, come with the intention of sharing my emotions with you, I'm not entirely sure how that would work. I mean, for one, I'm talking to a camera, I'm not talking to a person. So, based on what I just said, it might not work. I don't know. This is like, I'm just taking a stab in the dark here. I've never, like, I'm still in the desert. I don't, I'm looking for the oasis, and, I don't know what it is, so I don't know if I could actually uh, take this emotional dump here that I feel that I need to take. But I guess maybe I could just mention some of the emotions that I have, which some of them might sound obvious. Like I'm just, like you would probably assume that I experience a lot of anger and resentment, which is true. I am kind of angry at the way that my life has gone. I feel like I'm a good, decent person. I don't feel like I deserved a lot of the shit that I've gotten. And I mean, even like my mother sending me away, my dad's second wife leaving, which was in a way a repeat of what my mother did. Things like that. I don't feel like I deserve that. The way I've been treated by people in general, I mean, I think that just being, I'm not gonna say that most people mistreat me, but in a way, when I don't connect with people, I feel like there is a kind of resentment about that. I would say that I'm kind of angry at the fact that at 1,000, 10,000 failed relationships. I mean, I'm 45, and like I said, I haven't really had a real relationship. I think I've come close. Right now, I do have two friends. That there are two people who I consider my. These are when I mean friends, I mean like I can call them up at any time and talk to them. There are other people in my life that I feel kind of close to, but they're in more caregiver positions, but these two are not in any. They're not obligated to me. They're not. They're not working for me or anything like that. But neither of them are in the United States, and but I kind of forgot where I was going. And I was talking about friends. Yeah, failed relationships, I think, with women. Even like being attracted to men made me angry, like it's going to be in a video that I post. There's a story when I kissed the guy. It was this big, huge black guy who was so much bigger than me that I kind of felt vulnerable and kind of helpless in his arms when he was holding me. And I don't remember it actually. He told me that I was going around punching car doors, but I think it was just that feeling of being in that kind of woman's position. That's what it felt like to me when he held me. I remember him holding me and me feeling like this must be what it feels like to be a woman being held by a man, just because he was like 6'6", 300 pounds, significantly larger than I am, and it just made me feel like, I don't know, it just made me feel like, I just remember thinking this must be what it feels like for a girl. And apparently I didn't, I blacked out after that. But according to him, I got quite upset and went around punching cars. But yeah, even the trans thing, I'm not terribly excited about that. In a way, I do actually think it's kind of cool. Uh, I think there's just that part of me that likes being special, that doesn't want to be normal. Of course, there is that part of me that wants to be normal, which is angry that I'm having to go through this. Um, but I really, and I don't want to make it sound like I have nothing to be grateful for. I mean, there has been a lot of things that I have to be grateful for, like my trip to college. Going to the army there was a lot of good that came from that, even if it did hurt. So I don't want to make it sound like I've just had a shitty life. But there is this constant frustration of feeling that I'm not getting what I want. I would say that is a lifelong kind of thing, that I have just not gotten what I wanted. When that guy sat down and, like I said, when he was talking to me kind of face to face, directly facing me, like 6 inches away from me, that I felt like that was the closest I'd ever been to getting what I actually wanted. Um, with my dad, he is very generous. He'll constantly buy dinner for me and the other members of the family, and takes us on trips to the beach and Lake Tahoe, and we're all very generous things that I feel like I'm kind of blessed to have. But at the same time, he doesn't give me what I want, which is a relationship. And I would say that is the kind of, while I do have a lot of things to be grateful for, like I like living in America. I think it's a great place to live. I have been to other places. I've been to Afghanistan. Afghanistan is not the kind of place I would want to live. And I'm sure if the people who live there they like it. I'm sure they're endeared of it. I'm sure some of them probably want to leave too, because there's lovers and haters all over everywhere you go. But yeah, that feeling of being in the desert. I'm not trying to say like the world I live in is terrible, because it's not so much the world, it's more my inner space, not getting the thing that I want. And then I'm not really into material things. I don't want a mansion. If I had one, I might enjoy it. And if I had the opportunity to live in one, I don't know that I would turn it down, but I don't feel like it's that important. I would say relationships are kind of at the top of what I want. The story about the man that I just told you about, that was kind of an indication of that. My dad's second wife. There was a time when I first moved in with them. I never felt integrated in that family, and so that in itself was me not getting what I want. I wanted to feel integrated. Not necessarily in that family, but just in a family. But there was, at one point I did start calling her mother, and that's partly because my own mother, as I've said, kind of our relationship just it dwindled to nothing. I shouldn't say nothing, but to this. I think of it as basically, I can kind of see my makeup right here, but it's almost a kind of obligatory type thing. I honestly believe my mother, if she could, if her conscience would let her, she would just stop talking to me altogether. And I think the only reason she continues talking to me at all is just because her conscience she would feel too guilty. But so his second wife, I started calling her mother. So at this time I was 8 when I moved in with them. I was 14 when she left. So I was, basically a kid, and I remember there was a time when my dog died. It wasn't my dog; it was our dog. He got run over by a truck. We lived on a dirt road, and people on the dirt road don't drive that fast. If I go into a lot of detail on these stories, I'm not always entirely sure why I do it, but it's partly I think because I haven't told these stories to a lot of people, and here I am. I guess maybe this is part of connecting. I don't know, storytelling. But so we lived on a dirt road, and the dog would often chase cars, but they were only going like 15 or 20 miles an hour at the most, I would say. And so it wasn't too much of a problem. But then my brother and I were riding our bicycles up past the dirt road onto the main roads, the asphalt roads, where people are going like 45 miles an hour. And on this particular occasion, the dog, we could not get the dog to stay at home. Usually if we left, we would have to do something to get the dog to stay at home, either get someone to hold the dog when we left, because if not, the dog would follow us on the bicycles. And in this particular instance, we could not get the dog to stay home. And when we got to the asphalt road, we didn't even make it half a mile. A truck was coming up the road. The dog started going after the truck in the road, before the truck got there, and the truck ran over it. And the truck driver was nice enough to carry the dead dog. The dog was already dead. It was once he hit it, and he picked it up and put it in the back of his truck, and me and my brother also, and our bicycles, and carried us all back to the house. And that was a tearjerker for me. I started crying, and I was inconsolable. I just started crying, and I was really the only one crying. I think after a certain point, anyways. I think my dad and my brother were crying too, maybe, but it was like after about like 5 minutes, they were done, and I was still just sobbing. And that's when his wife came to me, and she and I were alone in the bathroom, and she put her arms around me and held me. And she held me for 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. It was a long time. It was the longest I'd ever been held by another human being, probably since I was a baby. And at that time too, I remember thinking that this is what I want. I want to feel this. I want to feel close. I want to feel, and she left. It might have been, I don't know how long past that point it was, but like I said, I was 14 when she left, and when she left my dad, she left me too. And of course I was angry because of that, and not just angry, but my self-esteem took a hit. I don't even need to say that I felt unwanted. When my own mother gives me up, and then my dad's second wife leaves, it left me feeling kind of like I'm a turd. I'm just shit on the inside. I'm not valuable to anybody, and it didn't help that my dad, his way of dealing with that was to go off on his own. That he would take very long walks by himself, and not. When she left, it was like there was no talking about it. In a similar way that the family doesn't talk about me being trans, with me being there, anyways. There was no real discussion of her leaving. She took her sons, my half brothers, with her, and it was just me and my dad and my brother for a while until he met his new wife, his third wife, they're still together. And she's a very nice lady. Not I wouldn't call her warm. But she is. I've been to their house on occasions, and after not being there for years, like when I came back from college, and she didn't even talk to me. After a while, she did maybe, but like when I walked in the house, it was just kind of like no hello or anything. It was just, and that kind of thing makes me angry. I actually talked to her about our relationship because I work for a family business, and she's not my mother, but she works for the business too. She schedules site evaluations for me to do. I go to customers' houses to talk to them about what they want for their projects. And in the emails that she sends to customers, she refers to me as her son. But she's never called me son to my face. She's never talked to me. She's never like given me a birthday card that says to my son or anything like that. And that is it's annoying. I would almost say it's infuriating, but at least I would say it is annoying. And I talked to her about that, and but what I told her was that I said, if you want that relationship, if you want me to be your son, if you want to have a relationship, I said, I'm okay with that. I said, the only thing is that we don't have that relationship. You've never really treated me like a son. You've given me gifts on Christmas, but my own mother does that, the same lady who hardly ever talks to me. And my relationship with those two women is almost the same. It's slightly different, but I don't see much difference. And so I don't really see her as my mother. I don't see my own mother as my mother, really. So I wasn't, but she said that, she said no. And her reason was that my father is too possessive. She said that the son is spending inordinate amount of time with the wife. It kind of makes sense, but the thing is that I don't see it as she has her own, like I said, people in the family I don't see them as very emotionally, like I said, I don't perceive a lot of emotional kind of exchanges. I don't feel like people really share their emotions. There's not a lot of I love yous, that kind of thing. And there were actually times when I actually kind of wanted for her to be my mother. She's a very capable, very accomplished person. She was a highly acclaimed teacher, professor also, teacher. I think a teacher in high school and a professor in college. And somebody who I kind of admire for that, and someone who I feel like could give me guidance as a youngling, even though I'm 45 years old now. But yeah, when she told me that, I was just like, what the fuck? I have 3 potential mothers, but not a single one of them wants to be my mother. And that just kind of eats at me. I don't know what else. I've talked about the Army in another video. The Army was that did a number on my self-esteem and being angry also. I mentioned it in another video about how I had my first homosexual experience in the Army, and just because of that, my self-esteem kind of went through the floor. I totally lost my nerve when I got to my duty station after that homosexual experience, and just felt like a criminal. But the treatment that I got after a while, because after a while, it was like the lower I sank, the lower I was treated, and I became basically the punching bag of people in my platoon and in other platoons. Became kind of the butt of the joke, so to speak. I don't remember actually jokes being made about me, but if you kind of catch my drift, people like to push my buttons, try to make me angry. But it wasn't just the button pushing. But it was more. I think what bothered me the most was just kind of this feeling that I was kind of like at the bottom. Like if there's an alpha, there's an omega, and I was the omega. I was the village idiot, or whatever you want to call it. It was like I no matter what I did, it wasn't right, and that things like that. I mean, that was the most probably extreme example of being, I would say, mistreated. I wasn't like I wasn't in fights, but there was a lot of just. A guy walked up to me once, and I remember he slapped me in the face with his shirt sleeve while I was sitting on my cot, and just the thought that he thought that it was okay to do that, and I didn't even do anything, and it was at that time I was just so down on myself that I just felt like almost like I deserved it. And then the things like when I came out as trans, not just to my family, but to the surrounding city, the way people reacted to me, that just, it's the same thing. I feel like I don't deserve this. I mean, I'm a human being, it's like I am, you don't need to treat me like I'm a piece of trash just because of how I dress and that kind of thing. I mean, that to me, it just seems totally undeserved, and then I feel like I'm not going to say that I want to destroy society or anything like that, but it just does make me feel like there's a kind of a resentment, and I kind of feel like I don't like society. I kind of I talk a lot about being an alien. I felt like an alien for most of my life, and I think part of that is that resentment towards society, where I don't even want to be identified with society because I have such a kind of tarnished view of society that I don't want to be one of them. And that's just another reason why I actually think being trans is kind of cool, because that makes me not one of them and kind of sets me apart. And it's going on an hour now. So my therapy sessions with psychologists are usually about an hour. So that was I would say a full psychotherapy session. So I am gonna just stop right there. If I have more to say, I'll just do another session. All right. Good night.